Hey there, welcome back to another Rest, Eat, Move podcast. Today we have a dual podcast with a big fella in the house. We're going to kind of go back in time, the foundation of nutrition, macronutrients, micronutrients, Nutrition 101. You've heard some of this before. You've heard some of it maybe in pieces, but it's important to come back to it occasionally as we're discussing different topics, because if we talk about different foods and we don't talk about why, then we kind of lose the connection between, why would you want to be putting in wheatgrass in your diet? Like, what is the reason why behind it? And that's what Nutrition 101 is. That's what macronutrients are. That's what micronutrients are. We'll talk about bulls. We'll talk about digestion, because at the end of the day, you want nutrition, but you also have to have digestion. So this is one of your favorite topics to talk about. You love talking about bulls. It's something that catches people off guard. But let's talk about Nutrition 101. What are your thoughts on Nutrition 101? Why do people need to know Nutrition 101?
The beginning is to understand what is nutrition. And nutrition is, when people think of it, it just feels like food. But really, nutrition is fueling the body, allowing the body to heal itself. So we need these raw materials for the body to function at its highest level. So the first thing you always ask people is, or you're looking, is what are they missing? What nutrients are they missing? When the body breaks down, generally it's a nutrient deficiency. So is it B vitamins? Is it omega-3 fats? Is it vitamin C, D3, whatever? What nutrients are you missing? And number two is, just because you put in the body, it doesn't mean your body's going to break it down and absorb it correctly. So the first thing is, what are you missing? Number two is, what are you not absorbing?
So with so many tests out there, and a lot of these tests are going to tell you what you're missing or not absorbing, isn't it go both ways? So if I just consumed a supplement of B12, wouldn't my blood tests tell me that I have high levels of B12?
It could, but the other thing too is your body really processing it the way it should be. So back in the day, I used to have a lot of clients taking vitamin D3, and they were taking 50,000 IUs a week. And next thing you know, they're having all sorts of toxicity issues with that. So just because you put it in the body does not mean your body's going to break down, absorb it, and get rid of it the way it should. So that's why we always try to focus on food first.
And I mean, through my perspective, so yeah, you get the test. Let's just say it says you're taking it or not taking it. But there also is an artistic point of view to food, because it's not just, and that's what we're going to get into with digestion. It's not just in and out. It's not just, I'm low in vitamin D, I need to take more vitamin D. There's some artistic elements, combination elements, the power of food versus synthetic that we'll get into.
Your sister says it's best. We don't eat nutrients, we eat food. And so when you start just putting nutrients in the body.
We're eating a lot of nutrients right now in society. A lot of people hacking the nutrients.
Too much nutrients. And so if I have anything, why don't I just take all these supplements versus, that's what we're getting.
Funny. I like drinking orange juice occasionally, like really good quality orange juice. But when you go to try to find orange juice, it's really hard to find orange juice without added crap.
Fortified with everything.
Or then they just have one that's just like no pulp. Well, I want pulp. I don't want added. I want just like, what's the freshly squeezed orange juice?
Yeah, so we keep getting away from fortified cereals, fortified, orange juice,
eggs
with pulp, no pulp.
Yeah, the pasture-raised eggs just got caught injecting something in the chickens and make the yolk more
gluten-free. You talk a lot about that. Is the gluten-free aisle healthier than the? No. So that's the why we keep going back to, let's just, what are we missing? Let's just take that nutrient.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the foods that we're missing or the foods that we're not absorbing. That's Nutrition 101. Those are the deficiency possibilities. Let's talk with the foods that we're missing before we go into micronutrients.
Well, the big ones we're missing, for most people, it's omega-3 fats. And we'll talk about specifics in a minute, but that's what we're missing. We're also missing B vitamins. So when you cut out, which the topic is today, when you cut out macronutrients and you cut out a category, now we're really depleted in those areas.
Yeah, so if you cut out a macronutrient, you're going to have macro problems at some point. And if you cut out micronutrients, you're going to have probably macro problems
And
too.
if you think about food itself, really gets down to water, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins, and minerals. There's nothing else. But we try to make it so complicated. I got to take this, and this, HMB, NAD, but the list goes on and on. It never ends. So that's why, this podcast stemmed with a woman calling me, came through the website, got on the phone, and she had rheumatoid arthritis. So I started asking some questions. And the first question I started realizing very quickly is that her immune system's obviously messed up because she has rheumatoid arthritis, so she's not old. And that doesn't really matter either. But one thing she said right away, she doesn't eat carbohydrates because she's a pre-diabetic. So the doctor wants her to cut out her carbs for the diabetes, and now her immune system's a mess. And then I started asking her what is a carbohydrate, and she didn't even know. She thought it's basically, processed sugar. Reality is, like, I went deeper, and she didn't know. And I said, well, your pH is out of whack, so your body's going to have more acid, which has more inflammation. She says she has tons of inflammation. And I asked her, do you eat fruits? And she said, oh, no. So that's what stemmed this podcast, because she did not know what a carbohydrate is. And she has rheumatoid arthritis, which is, the immune system screaming at her.
Yeah, so it's, again, you've heard me say it many times. It's very simple. So water, carbs, proteins, fats, vitamins, minerals.
That's it. Nothing else.
And then we're going to go even simpler and say food.
Right.
So we're going to talk about vitamin D in a second. We're going to talk about collagen.
But when you eat food categories, they have, this cross section.
Well,
here.
yeah. I mean, one of the things with carbohydrates is so wild. So if someone has rheumatoid arthritis, carbohydrates are going to be where you get most of your anti-inflammatory properties.
Correct.
Antioxidants, these powerful polyphenols. They're going to be coming from the carbohydrates.
So the thing she was taking is obviously immune suppressors. So she's taking
prescriptions.
Yep, she's taken that, and then she's taken all sorts of pain meds. So I kept drilling down, and this was not a consult. This was just a call.
Yeah, it's getting more complicated.
Yeah, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I said, number one, let's go back. Do you have the Rest Eat Move book? Do you listen to our podcast? Let's get back to the basics. And then we can talk again. But
again, in our work, the symptoms are getting more wild, but the solution's easier.
It's right in front of us.
Seriously, someone comes to see you. They're anxious. They have an autoimmune issue. They have inflammation. They can't sleep. Really, if there was an emotion in the way, if it just was a dog, an animal that doesn't have too much vision of the future, and
just focus on the now.
I would say, you need to get sleep, and the dog would sleep. But when you get these humans and you got these emotions and these beliefs, and I mean, think about these symptoms that are so curable, reversible, if you just did this simple thing for many people. In her case, it's probably one or two things that would have an exponential, but it would take a little time, and it would take a little effort.
Well, I think you just said it. These beliefs are so powerful, it muddies up the water.
Yeah.
So she's not even receptive to eat a fruit.
Yet she is interested in improving her pain.
Interested in improving the pain and reach out to us through the website.
And I talk about the arrows. One arrow says, I want this.
Yeah, right.
My right arm's saying, I want this, but I'm going to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, they're not communicating.
And, we always talk about curiosity, but if they have these powerful beliefs and they don't have the curiosity, there's not much we can.
Yeah, curiosity is a blueprint for your solution.
I just can't. I don't really have, like I was doing an event last week in Connecticut, and I come in and I'm the speaker, and 1, 2, 3 people come in and they want to tell me everything, and I'm like, if I'm that, I'd like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And there was none of that. I didn't even say nothing. I was just listening. But they want to tell me everything.
They found out you're a health speaker. Now they're telling you what they know about health.
Yeah. And it's interesting to me. I wouldn't go down that path. I would be going, hey, what do you think?
What do you think?
What do you think? What do you think about this? What do you do this? I just, sometimes I'm like, wow. Because if I'm coming in there and it's a financial group, I'm going to ask if the person's a financial speaker, hey, what do you think about this, and this? But again, it's if you have these powerful beliefs and you're not curious. And that's why we're having this podcast
hopefully today we'll kind of open up the beliefs. The beliefs are actually pretty scientific and simple. The artistic piece is probably where the most effort comes in because it requires change in beliefs and a little bit of effort and sprinkled in. So missing nutrients, omega-3s, we're missing omega-3s, we're missing B vitamins because we're not eating these ancient grains and starchy carbohydrates.
Missing vitamin C because we don't eat fruit anymore.
We don't eat fruit, so vitamin C. And here's something I highlighted because I just like to bring a little bit of kind of like that one-liner. But vitamin C is the cofactor for an enzyme to produce collagen. So I don't eat fruit. I'm on a carnivore-like diet, high-protein diet. Right. I want to look lean. And then everybody and their grandma is taking now collagen. Mm-hmm. Well, what we have to realize, just taking collagen doesn't actually go straight to your skin. The body has to break down that collagen supplement, and it's going to turn into a protein, and your body's going to figure out how to use it. But actually, if you want to go closer to the source of how do I improve my elasticity, my skin, and the collagen, well, vitamin C is the most important micronutrient vitamin, and it's the cofactor for the enzyme that produces collagen. Mm-hmm. And so we see this a lot through just our experience and looking at what someone's eating to say, hey, you have this gap. And people want to fill the gap with some type of supplement. We want to fill that gap with some type of food. And when you fill the gap with food, in our opinion, really...
well, I was doing Q&A. I did 3 events last week in the East Coast, and during the Q&A, the question came up, it's going to come up about creatine. So I said, well, I'm number one, I just talked about glomerular filtration rate, kidney function. Your kidney function is going to be exposed a little bit if you do much to protein powder or creatine or whatever. It's just tough on the kidneys, right? And so this woman comes up afterwards with one of her, I think it was the advisor, and she says, "Now you don't really believe in creatine." I said, "No, I didn't believe in. I believe in creatine. I believe in creatine from food. You just get it from, if you eat salmon, you get 2 grams, and if you eat bison, you get 3 grams, and if you eat any kind of animal protein, you're going to get plenty of creatine.
You need creatine.
Yeah. So I don't say that. I just don't want synthetic creatine that's going to put stress on my kidneys." She wasn't buying that at all. I need more creatine than you're talking about. I'm like, well, did you ever hear of creatine 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever? So that's the challenge out there right now, that belief. It's a collagen, it's a dance, like you said. And that's the challenge, is that.
So a lot of people are thinking, okay, creatine, I'm missing it, I need to take it. But let's talk about the second deficiency, which is I'm not absorbing it.
Not absorbing it.
And so with creatine, for example, that might be a case that my garden isn't out of whack and I'm not absorbing it. So before I go and say, well, I'm just going to guess I'm not absorbing it or guess I'm not getting it, I like to start with number 2 sometimes first, because for most people we see, their garden has to be cleaned up anyway.
They're not gonna absorb it anyway. And then the other thing too, what you just mentioned, how do you know how much creatine to take or melatonin or and there's no clue. There's no dance to it.
Yeah.
So the body's gonna break it down. It's gonna
do it and put it in your mouth.
Yeah, just
get that powder in your mouth.
Yeah, and then you have to stir it up and it gets gummy, and so it really gets back to like common sense is how much do you even eat when you eat food you're gonna get it naturally?
Raspberry watermelon flavor.
Yeah. Raspberry watermelon flavored creatine or collagen protein powder or whatever.
So I like what the not absorb. This is something that really is happening more and more. So as we talk about pH, the pH gets more acidic, the body gets more acidic. We don't have as much of these nutrients for the body to kind of heal itself. That digestion gets out of whack. And when that digestion gets out of whack, we don't absorb the nutrients. So people have too much, too fast, diarrhea, constipated, they're gummed up, or their toxicity levels high. Talk to us about the not absorbing factor and how you're seeing more and more. So lady comes to see you as rheumatoid arthritis. She has high inflammation. She's going to be a candidate for very low absorption.
Yeah, and everything's speeding up. She's got mineral depletion now because her pH is too acidic. So now I'm using buffering minerals to combat that. And the first minerals going out the door is calcium, followed by magnesium. And now we get into the trace minerals. Now we're depleted. She doesn't think that way. She's just trying to lower her glucose level because she's a pre-diabetic and she has rheumatoid arthritis. So it just kept, the cascade goes on. And then I get into the bulls. And I just briefly talked about that, and she had no clue about that, which most people don't. That's the bowel.
Nobody wants to talk about it until it's something they need to talk about.
So tell me about your bowel movement. That's the first one. You know, is it runny? Is it constipated? What is it? How often do you have one? What's the color of it?
Do you have any idea?
Yeah. So then from there we go into the urine. Is it dark? Is it light? Are you drinking enough water? Hydrated? Whatever. And then we go into the lymphatic system. You know, are you moving your body? That's the sewer system for the body. Your lungs are using your diaphragm, and the last one is your skin. So when you start asking about the bowels, the bowel, the urine, the lungs, the lymph, the skin, now we start seeing holes. There's something not right in that elimination process. And if you don't have the super highways of elimination open, then you're going to have some form of toxicity. Now we're back to the square one. We're not getting good absorption.
Yeah, and so again, our approach is we like to look at and say, okay, if we can have good bulls, super highways of elimination, if those bulls are executing on all cylinders, we're probably in good shape.
Probably good
and
shape.
Until we get those going on all cylinders, why would I want to add something that I'm not sure is going to be absorbed? So I get blood work, or I get a test, or somebody tells me that I'm deficient in X, Y, or Z, or I hear on social media that most people are, and I assume. Yet I have no idea if I'm having a regular bowel movement. I don't know if I'm going to the bathroom too much or too little. Am I moving my lymphatic system? Are my arms ever getting above my head? Am I bouncing on a mini trampoline? Am I doing a vibe plate? There's some things that we can easily do.
Yeah, running in place, walking.
Running in place.
Moving your arms, yep.
The lungs, are you expelling any type of effort? I've been listening, we like to listen to different things. One of the biggest trends is cardiovascular equipment in gyms are starting to get dust. Everyone's lifting weights, which I love strength training.
Sure.
But cardiovascular movement is not just about losing weight or just doing the cardio. There's a lung component to it that's
Correct.
very essential. Lung capacity is the fastest thing that ages in the human body. So I see a lot of these young folks that are pretty fit, but I know they couldn't jog around the track one lap without being winded. And so these are some of those highways of elimination. And I told you last week I was in the health club, and I mean, I'm just minding my own business. And this, young, tall, dark, pretty fit guy, he's looking himself in the mirror. He just continues to look at himself in the mirror, and I just can't not see it. And the next thing you know, he's talking to his buddies, and he says, "Hey, I need to go get some beef tallow, because now beef tallow is the miracle cure for everything." And as he's saying, "I need more beef tallow," he reaches into his bag and he grabs one of those e-cigarettes. So he's gonna go take a vape pen, and he takes this big inhale of this vape pen and blows it into the locker room. Like that's not gonna affect anybody. It's just whatever he thinks it is. You can see the cloud. It's something. And I just think to me is like, we're so in tune to this result we want. We want to look good. We want to feel good. I think more people are more interested in that. Yet we're so behind the 8 ball on these simple foundational practices. Mm-hmm. That vape pen is one of the worst things you put in your body. And he's worried if he's going to have beef tallow or whatever other nutrient. I couldn't make it up. And so it's the same thing we see. And again, we try to have fun with this. But I see people that have no idea if they're having any toxicity. They're not even aware, are they getting the right nutrients? And the first thing they want to do is they want to do some supplement. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're having this conversation. Right. And you go further and you have a symptom as crazy as rheumatoid arthritis or Crohn's disease or IBS. And next thing you know, people think, well, I have this disease. It's genetics. It's not fixable.
Well, and you get I've had a fair amount of neuropathy. And people, sometimes women will come out of breast cancer and they get neuropathy or whatever. It's very common. But a lot of people don't have any of these, from a chemo or whatever. They just have neuropathy. I'm like, so tell me, what is neuropathy? they don't even know what it really is. They just know that it's affecting their fingers and their feet, and they don't have the feeling and whatever. But its body's screaming back to you. So if the body's screaming back to you, what would be step number one versus the doctors say, well, there's nothing we can do about it? Well, that's not true. And again, not all doctors are saying that, but maybe that's what you wanted to hear because there's...
Or you heard that, and
that's what you heard. That's not what they said.
Yeah.
So that's we step back.
They're trying to comfort you.
Yeah.
And they're
it's okay. You know, it's not all your fault.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, what could you do to enhance?
Shoot, I'd want to do anything possible.
Anything possible. But again, when I heard that, I'm like, I don't think your doctor really said all that. Could have said something, but not that.
And then one last thing, and then we're going to get into these macronutrients. Is this one's kind of driving me crazy lately? Is the colostrum coming from beef? Okay, and so it's going to be dairy cows, the dairy colostrum. And how many people do you meet that say I can't have dairy? How many people are you meeting? I mean, I would say it's 50% of people now have been told or think that they can't have dairy. Yet they continue to eat cheese, so it's just like the milk.
Yeah.
And so all these people can't have dairy, yet so many people are taking colostrum or thinking colostrum is going to be the miracle. That is dairy. And then so many people take whey protein, which is, again, coming from cheese, coming from dairy. And it boggles my mind because you're seeing some of the same things. It just takes time.
Well, again, I don't eat carbs. I don't eat dairy. I don't, there's no knowledge behind it. So that's the problem. So when you start diving into the weeds, like this woman, I was trying to help her, but she kind of went down a path. Like I'm like, well, let's just back up. What is a carbohydrate? She did not know. But she's cutting that whole food group out, which makes her rheumatoid arthritis much worse.
Yeah, no, our biggest challenge is
it's like, I want to help.
Our biggest challenge is beliefs. So people need beliefs. Mm-hmm. It allows us to work through the world.
We all have them.
But if that belief is so powerful, and it probably is powerful in her case because she's been guided down this path, it's going to be real. It'd be like, I've already gone, 100 miles that way. I don't really want to turn around.
Well, and again, when I'm doing this event the other night and doing Q&A, and the question we always get is, I really healthy. Okay, but what are you missing? What are you not absorbing? Maybe there's something you could improve upon. We all could. I know I could. So that's where you got to just open that can up and take that box of belief and just let that thing just have a little bit of air.
Let it air it out a little bit.
Just open it up and see if there's a little air in that box.
Okay, let's talk about macronutrients. And again, I'm going to say this. You cut out a macronutrient, doesn't matter if it's proteins, fats, or carbs, you will have macro problems. We saw this with fats 30 years ago. Everything was fat-free. Mm-hmm. Cardiovascular risk went through the roof, hormonal issues, low T, all those things. We realized, okay, we can't cut out fats, but it's still lingering for carbohydrates. And I don't think it ever has been that case for protein, other than when people are actually malnourished, they're not getting enough protein. Or maybe you're a vegan and the protein you're consuming is very, processed. So macronutrient, talk to the listener about a macronutrient.
So, you can show the food target on the screen. So pull that up for a second. But, I designed that in 1994, a version of that. That's obviously many upgrades. But the large health club I was at, the Michigan Athletic Club, many people were trying to lose weight. And I like, okay, what can we do? What kind of tool could we do? And so Al Arns, a fairly close friend of mine, mentor, said, have you ever thought about doing some kind of a stoplight, green, red, amber, that was the genesis behind it. But it's broken down into 3 macronutrients: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And the goal of the food target is to help people understand how to improve the quality of each. Not get rid of them, but the key is creating quality of each in balance. So that's really what it's about. And the top of the, again, when we talk about carbohydrates, is what are they? They're just sugars. They're just sugars linked together. Now, the more processed a carbohydrate is, the shorter the sugar chain. It gets in the bloodstream very quickly, like a Twizzler or a potato chip or whatever it is. And then a longer chain carbohydrate, which has more fiber, broken down slower, that's what we're talking about, the source. So that's going to be your fruits, your vegetables, your ancient grains, starches, legumes, that kind of thing. And we'll talk about sweeteners too, but those are all your carbohydrates. And when you take them out of the diet, you're going to have a problem.
So as I'm just looking at this real quick, and I was preparing for this, and just looking at this again triggers different thoughts. But you look at the red area, you got pie, cake, cookies, pastries, donuts, white flour, onion rings, French fries. A lot of these things are going to be very beige color, plain white things. Mm-hmm. You could sit them out on a countertop. They're not probably going to have anything happen to them. They're not going to rot. They're not going to mold.
Yep, they're not going to rot.
That tells you that they don't have tons of digestive enzymes, natural bacteria, pro and prebiotics.
Yep.
They're not going to have these polyphenols, these antioxidants, the colorful nature. And so let's just take that visual for 1 second and ask, does a carbohydrate equal a carbohydrate? So does 400 calories of French fries equal 400 calories of broccoli? Nobody could ever say that it would. Yet we still are taking our supplements, are taking our nutritional advice based on this philosophy that it depends on the amount that we need to take of these macronutrients.
Yeah, it was never about the amount. It was always about the quality first. And so once you get the quality first, like, I used to do this in a seminar. If I gave you 5, processed cookies and 5 apples, you're not going to eat 5 apples. Not going to happen. You're going to eat 1 apple. You're going to eat 1 banana. That's the live, real food. And if the food doesn't rot, you probably shouldn't eat it.
And again, I think one of our philosophies, when we wrote Target to Table, and I still get people kind of complaining, you don't have any serving size or calories or nutritional facts. That was the point. Every health food cookbook is bombarded with how many calories something have, what are the nutrients. Sure, you need to know sometimes those.
Yeah, you have awareness.
But if you eat towards the center of the target, and let's just say you're not even using our tool here called the food target, but if you're eating at the source of food, you don't need to know how many micronutrients something has, how many milligrams of zinc something has. You just know that if you eat a variety, you're usually going to get it. Now,
again, it's a dance.
It's a dance. Now, we're trying to go after the science of the macronutrients and the micronutrients, create the awareness. But our philosophy is if you can get this foundation down, that's why you don't need colostrum. That's why you don't need creatine.
Right.
That's why you don't need a multivitamin, because we're going to go to food as our solution versus thinking that we need to go somewhere else. Again, we all have gaps.
Right.
You want to fill the gaps. That's what we think of superfoods. Superfoods fill the gaps. And when you fill the gaps, the body knows what to do. If you don't fill the gaps with superfoods, you're going to have to do it with supplements. In our opinion, it's a better choice.
Well, in your last podcast, you talked a little bit about your shopping lists and stuff. And so, for example, if you just broke the carbohydrates down, you start with fruits. What do? They're naturally sweet. So to me, that's my sweetener. Now, do I eat too many dried fruits? Oh, sure. I eat too many raisins or mangoes or figs or whatever. But that's not really going to get me in trouble. I'm not going to go crazy with that. But that's a natural sweetener. But fruits are the most alkalizing of all nutrients. So if I'm trying to get somebody's pH to have less inflammation, I'm going to have them eat some fruit.
If I'm trying to get someone's digestion
improved, they got to eat fruit.
Which might have sometimes a little bit of a symptom response that might take some time for the body to get used to.
Right, like a banana, an apple, a lemon. These things are all great for digestion. Figs are high in magnesium. Mangoes are high in magnesium. So now we're covering lots of ground, but once I cut these fruits out, we're going to have some problems. So fruits is a big one. And then you go to vegetables, and again, lots of color, antioxidants, good for gut health. Most vegetables have about 50% protein, so it's a mixed food. Fruits are all carbohydrates. Then you go to ancient grains. We're not talking about the crummy, people say all the time they beat up oatmeal. What kind of oatmeal are we talking about? Mm-hmm. Is it the real oats?
And how much? I mean, seriously, how much oatmeal can you eat?
You're not going to eat that much.
It
right?
sticks. I mean, you got to listen to the body. If you feel like maybe it's too filling, then you just have a variety.
Yeah,
of it.
And be aware of it. Is it a half a cup I'm eating? Is it a 2/3 cup? What is it? You're not.
And how are you cooking it?
How are you cooking it? Are you doing it overnight oats? Are you doing oat groats in a crock pot? Are you doing teff, amaranth, millet? There's lots of grains that can be really healthy, but then they have different nutrients.
Yeah.
So now I got much more nutrients. I have the fiber. Now I got the dance going on, good gut health.
So I was kind of doing some research thinking, okay, so vitamins are organic compounds. So meaning that they are going to be produced in these foods. Minerals are inorganic compounds, meaning they're going to have to be absorbed from the soil.
From this, yeah.
Okay?
Correct.
Now here's the thing. So why wouldn't you say, well, why don't I just need to eat one food? Isn't it taking the soil? Well, all foods, just like humans, require different things for different things. Each vegetable, let's just take vegetables.
They're different.
They're different. So they're going to have different varieties. And so yes, you maybe eat broccoli, but if all you eat is broccoli, you're probably not going to have a full spectrum of all the nutrients that are possible. So selenium is something we talk about a lot. So a lot of men come to see us and their testosterone's low. Well, one of the best things to boost testosterone, one of the precursors for testosterone is selenium. Well, let's just do a little research. What's the highest food source of selenium? Brazil nuts. You take 1 or 2 Brazil nuts throughout the day, you boost that selenium. You don't have to take it in a jar or a tablet. You take it through food.
Or zinc.
Mm-hmm. And so this is how it kind of works. And it was interesting to think of that as that's why you need a variety. All these different foods need different things. And when you consume a little bit more variety, you get more variety into your diet.
Well, it's like eating a potato. There's white potatoes, purple potatoes, red potatoes, sweet potatoes.
They're all going to have a little different
They're all different. They're all good.
Yeah.
Or a beet is going to be a lot different than broccoli.
Well, then there's golden beets.
And there's so
red beets.
So now all you have to do is eat a beet or two and watch your urine change very quickly. So that's where people get sideways. Like, I'm just going to eat chicken and broccoli.
And then my point that I'm going to kind of stamp here is minerals synthetically are really damaging for your kidneys.
They're tough.
They're very tough. Vitamins you can kind of get away with a little bit more.
Yeah, you can spill them out a little easier.
But minerals are really tough. Yeah, I would say most people that I'm working with, their mineral deficiencies are actually what I'm trying to target the most. Mm-hmm. And so what most people are trying to hack is I can just get that mineral synthetically.
Right.
That's where we're seeing a lot of issues happening when people are actually trying to do the right thing to get the right result. We got to go back to this idea that we get these nutrients from food. We get these nutrients from the soil. We need a variety of different foods to get the spectrum of
And if you go back to the carbohydrates, really simple. I need to bring in high quality fruits. You talked about this in your shopping list. Oranges, apples, bananas, figs, mangoes, whatever it is, get a variety. Same thing with the vegetables, lots of color. Then your grains. I really think grains are really healthy for people if they're going to the source of the grains because they have so many nutrient values to them. And I like how they taste. And then you go to legumes and, I love to eat beans. Sometimes the beans don't really do well with me. And then you look at sweeteners and starches. I mean, potatoes. You were talking about potatoes to Prozac. It's such a great thing for brain health is when you're eating starchy carbohydrates. So, and then sweeteners. We're a big fan of local honey. We like maple syrup. Again, fruit is another sweetener. If you can really get real stevia leaf, which is incredible, and then agave nectar. But now you're seeing that's been processed a lot. So you just had to be careful with some of that.
So with the carbohydrates, I talk about 4 things: energy, fiber, antioxidants, and serotonin. So those are 4 big critical things only happen with carbohydrates. So when the woman's talking to you, she doesn't eat carbohydrates, specifically fruit. She just threw out, let's just say she threw out 3 of those things. She's not going to really be producing serotonin. She's not getting a ton of antioxidants. She's not getting a lot of fiber. Maybe she's getting her energy source from a variety of different foods. You can get it from fats and proteins. And probably she's eating other carbohydrates.
And not having great pre-pro and symbiotics.
Yeah, she has no pre-pro symbiotics.
So the gut's not healthy.
Or let's talk about these digestive enzymes. Every time I'm in the grocery store and you see the supplement for digestive enzymes, I'm thinking, why don't you just go eat a food that if you bite into it that it would rot?
Right.
It's going to have enzymes. Yeah. So I talked about vitamin C as a cofactor for enzymes for collagen. These foods, and so let's just take it further. Where do you get vitamin C? Orange, lemon, lime, grapefruit, any citrus fruits.
Pretty much most of your fruits have some kind of vitamin
There's going to be other foods that are going to be high in vitamin C. That's where I begin.
Right.
So if I feel like, wow, I really think I need colostrum for whatever reason, well, I'm going to be doing the omega-3s and some of these other,
right.
I'm going to eat fish and I'm going to try to eat some food. And then that's what happens as the body starts to use these nutrients. And so carbohydrates to me are the biggest macronutrient to get hacked, to get manipulated.
Yeah, and you don't ever hear people say, let's add more carbohydrate to my smoothie, or I need to get a carbohydrate, bar. That's not going to, it's just
But
that
you hear
belief.
people say, I need more antioxidants. Well, you need more carbohydrates.
Right.
Or different carbohydrates.
Or different ones. A lot more color.
Or I need more fiber. Well, I'm going to take Metamucil. No, why would you ever take Metamucil when you could just take, let's just say, flax seeds?
But if you can go back to the original talk about testing, you don't need a lot of testing if you really walk people through the bowls.
Yeah.
The bowel, the urine, the lymph, the lungs, the skin.
Yeah.
Let's talk. It's like the big three in the blood test. If your resting heart rate's good, your blood pressure's good, and your breaths per minute are good, probably going to be pretty good.
If your skin looks really good, if you're having good digestion, if you feel like you're sweating appropriately, if you feel like you have good cardiovascular output and are breathing correctly, everything else is, you talk about with Walt, it's a function, form equals function.
Form follows function.
So it's the same thing with, if I look at the bowls, it's telling me that I have good digestion, good elimination, good absorption.
I don't need 9,000 allergy tests. No. I'm just, right now, you're not eating a variety, your gut's not healthy. I don't need to know your tests. Let's test you with your bowls at some point in time. But when you really dive into the weeds, and again, when I sit down with people like, oh my gosh, I never knew that. I'm like, well, let's start with that first, and that will tell you how your gut's doing.
So let's talk about the other macronutrients. So fats. We love to talk about fats. Today, you said one of the biggest missing nutrients is a fat, omega-3 fats specifically. Why are omega-3s so...
Well, if you start out with fats, to make it really simple for everybody, you have saturated fats. Forever and ever and ever, they were thought of as something that causes heart disease. We want to avoid them. That's why back in the day, you wouldn't eat butter, you would do margarine, and we realized trans fats were much worse. So we want to have saturated fats. Saturated fats help the cell, they help, but we're not talking about the, grandma's, coconut German chocolate cake. We're talking about the real deal. So coconut's really high in saturated fats. Most nuts and seeds have saturated fat. We want saturated fat in your diet.
Well, that beef tallow that everybody's going crazy over.
Yeah, let's just focus on some real things. But if you're getting nuts and seeds, and especially coconut's like 92% saturated fat. It's really antifungal, antiviral. It's really good for your gut. So I always try to get shredded organic coconut or coconut oil. Try to get that in my diet regularly. And then from there, I go to monounsaturated fats, great for vessels, cell health, blood vessels, and that's going to be
olive oil,
macadamia nuts, almonds, that kind of stuff. And so that's an easy thing to throw in my pecans. I throw that in my oatmeal. It's an easy thing to do. And then you're broken down into the third category, and that's going to be your polyunsaturated fats, which are broken down into two categories, which would be omega-3s. That's the cod liver oil. That's the flax, chia, walnuts. And then we go to omega-6s, which most people don't talk about, is going to be you talked about a second ago, Brazil nuts, pumpkin seeds, hemp seeds.
But what people are talking a lot about is seed oils.
Seed oil. Let's not do corn oil and soybean oil.
And I think we've gone a little bit too extreme, because what they're not saying is we don't want to do processed seed oil.
Correct.
Or rancid seed oil. But there actually are omega-6 fats
that we need.
And you actually are going to have a ratio, for the most part, if you're eating as clean as you possibly could, 2-to-1, 6-to-3.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to ever go to 0 for your omega-6s. You don't want to.
And you look at omega-3s and omega-6, that's the raw material for hormonals. So whether it's estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, you need both of those categories.
And it's a ratio that you want to be somewhat familiar with.
And if you're eating live foods, you're not going to go crazy with it.
Yeah.
And there's a great blood test, especially for brain health. It's called omega-3 saturation level. That's a test you can get to see. And when you and I went to Aptos, California, and they did all this research, and it was a great couple days of training, but they talked a lot about mental health and lack of vitamin D3 and lack of omega-3 fats. And that's why we were really proponent of cod liver oil, because of the vitamin D3 and the omega-3. But those are your saturated fats, your mono, your poly, omega-3, omega-6s. And it's not that hard. If you can just eat some real food.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the grocery store. If you buy
Yeah.
good, high quality, extra virgin olive oil, you have virgin coconut oil, you have cod liver oil, nuts and seeds, away you go.
Well, when I sit down with clients and we actually put their nutrition program together, I want to map out. So they've heard me talk about those categories, and now we're going to talk about implementation.
Yeah.
When are you going to take omega-3 fats and put them in your body? And for many people, like to do it in the morning with some type. If they're making eggs, they're doing extra virgin coconut oil, or if they're doing the oatmeal on the run, they're doing shredded coconut, and they're doing some nuts and seeds. Boom, we're done. Then we go to the monounsaturated fats. Here's some macadamia nuts. Here's some almonds, olive oil. When are we going to put that in your diet? And then your omega-3s and omega-6s, they're like, wow, and you don't have to do it every day.
Yeah.
So now we're really into the application of the healthy fats. And that, again, we're building that structure.
And one of the things I see is avocado toast is so powerful. It's so popular, and it is powerful, and it is healthy, and it's a good option. But I see people thinking, well, I already have avocados. Well, that's one of the types of fats, and we need the variety. Just like we were talking about variety with carbohydrates. So I think we get so fixated on like these buzz trendy things. Like beef tallow is selling out from everywhere. You know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s got the French fries. We got to understand we can overconsume beef tallow. We can overconsume butter.
Sure.
We can overconsume fats.
That's just one, but when you said beef tallow or you said butter, we're breaking that down.
Yeah.
If you eat a real food, like there's really not a lot of breakdown when you consume a Brazil nut or a macadamia nut or even extra virgin olive oil. There's not much to it has changed. So that's where we got to step back and how do we do that?
Yeah.
And many people have said to you and said to me, are you doing an omega-3 fat? Yeah, I'm doing avocados.
Yeah.
Well, that's not
Omega-3
omega-3 fat.
That is a fat.
So we need to just step back and say, let's have a little bit of variety. You know, when people say I'm eating a broccoli, that broccoli is a vegetable, but there's a boatload of other ones. Or if I'm eating a fruit, I don't only eat bananas, or I don't only eat oranges. We're trying to get, as you get more comfortable, you create more variety.
And that's why it goes back to the bulls. And so like one of the things with the skin, for example, two of the things that really help skin are going to be your coconut oil and your omega-3s. Now, all of them are going to be helping with, but those are two that if you kind of add, you actually can see a skin.
Yeah, and when we talk about like your body's always talking to you, skin, hair, nails, the body's telling you if the skin looks crummy and the hair's not good, you can see how this starts to roll. Like the body doesn't have the right nutrients, hence I'm going to see deficiencies.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things from a skin perspective is retinol, which retinol is a form of vitamin D. And so it's very expensive to put retinol on your skin. But when you look at cod liver oil, our cod liver oil, one of the things I try to explain, it's a little more complicated, is it's naturally occurring vitamin D3 in the retinol form. So one of the best things you can put in your body, and it's one of the most expensive synthetic things to put on your body.
Right.
But you can do this with food, and that's one of the benefits. And many people have no idea that retinol is the form of D3.
It's so healthy for you. You cut your finger and you put some cod liver oil on that. That's one of the fastest ways to heal that skin. It's like a magic way to heal the skin.
Doesn't smell good, but it will.
It tastes like a lemon, but yeah.
Until it oxidizes.
Until it oxidizes now and smell like cod liver oil. Anyway, so those are your fats.
Okay, and then the last thing is proteins, and this is where we've gone just crazy out of bounds. And I'm just going to be transparent. I like people to kind of know. I saw this thing from Jocko, and if you don't know who Jocko is, he's a influencer, former Navy SEAL. I think he's a very well-spoken leadership guru, but he's gotten into supplements and food, and he came out with these cookies and this drink. And his philosophy is the more protein, because you're going to fuel for the war, the better. I think it's a wrong way to think about food. Now, if your goal is to be as big of as a mountain, you could care less about your bulls. You're not trying to live as high quality as long as possible. You're just really, for a small period of time, you're trying to be as big and strong and muscular. Like, that's a whole different mindset. But what I think he's missed is just because it has 50 grams of protein does not make it healthy. We're going to talk about proteins in a second. Just because it's a protein, just because it's whey protein powder, you will never see me put that in my body. So I go to the club, they got a smoothie. Every smoothie, they ask you what kind of protein powder. I don't want protein powder. Well, we charge you for it. Well, I don't care. I don't want it. So put in your fruit, put in a little bit of flaxseed, some nuts, some other stuff. Away I go. I just want a smoothie. I like the taste a little bit from here to there. I need something. You're not going to see me putting creatine supplements in my body. You're not going to see me put egg substitute or egg beaters. You're not going to see me putting in bologna and, some of these things that are our protein.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, like, we went to the East Bank Club, and I love the East Bank Club. Sean and Kristen are members there, but I'm looking at the smoothie bar, and they have juices. It's amazing. But the other thing you could put in a smoothie, it's incredible. I can put anything I want in there. I could put creatine in there. I don't think they have colostrum, but they have. They will, but you can get, because obviously there's a demand that they're being taught. It's not just should I put fruit in there? Should I put some nuts and seeds in there? Coconut water? It's going to be this. And I'm like, really? People are adding this, and this to their smoothie, and they obviously are.
Yeah. And again, common sense. Do we think whey protein powder is going to be as powerful for the body as consuming grass-fed beef?
No.
Yet, if we're just comparing grams, it's going to be much easier for me to get more grams than by doing a protein powder.
Well, again, we're back to how many grams nobody ever tells me how many grams of carbohydrates should they consume, or how many grams of fat. They kind of, paying attention. They're counting. We're not counting. We're just eating real food. And so when you think of protein itself, it's plants and it's animal. And let's try to make those both better. And if we can do that, nuts and seeds, vegetables, ancient grains, these all have protein.
I've never gone a day where I said it was hard to get enough protein.
Right.
Have you ever felt that?
Never.
Ever?
Nope.
Yet the number one, let me repeat this. I've never gone a day where it was hard for me to get enough protein.
So this tonight we're talking about what are we having for dinner tonight. So your mom, we talked about this. We're just like, we had bison yesterday, and we had chicken, and we had salmon, we had all this stuff up north. But I said, why don't we just have a big salad tonight? What kind of protein do you want on it? I said, well, why don't we just put some nuts and seeds on it? Was that enough protein for you? Oh, okay.
I'll be fine.
So again, but that's always been the mentality out there is, I need more protein. No, you don't. If I got enough nuts and seeds, you got a lot of vegetables in there. I'm not deficient in protein throughout the day.
The wild thing is so there's some interesting conversations like, I need to consume this much protein. And by the way, I'm going to fast for 24 hours.
Right.
Well, you didn't get any protein for the 24 hours.
Right.
So why can't I go one day where I'm eating a little bit more protein from animal, and then one day maybe I'm not even eating any animal,
right,
and then someday I'm eating a combination?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be a little bit better for my digestion?
Probably would be outstanding for your digestion.
So to me, here's the takeaway from protein. If you consume whey protein powder, colostrum, collagen,
or any protein powder,
any synthetic any
isolate, it's going to be tough on the kidneys.
Tough in the kidneys, but I do believe if you pay attention to the bulls,
right,
your
it
bowel,
will affect it.
your lymph, your lymphatic, your lungs, your skin, something's going to show up there because that's processed protein that the body doesn't really know what to do with it.
And the volume is going to be too great.
Yeah.
So now, again, back to nitrogen balance. Do I have enough for repair and recovery? That's all you're looking for. And so for the average person, which we really don't get into that, but I'll say to them, we're not even counting. But if you looked at carbohydrates, approximately 50% of your calories, give or take, we're not counting it. But if you really want to get down that path, proteins might be 20%, and your fats probably 30%. So now you can see there's a balance of two. And some days will be less of this, and some days will be more of this, but we're not counting. We're just getting improved
and then there's
quality.
Specificity. What are you trying to accomplish? But what we're talking about today is general longevity, lifespan, living our best, hair, skin, nails, digestion. I want to have muscles. I want to be strong.
And proteins are amino acids. So if you said, what is a protein? They're called amino acids. So too much protein can make your body a little bit too acidic. And that's another issue that we talk about, inflammation and gut health, and the list goes on. So, and if you're eating really high quality plants, you get most of your amino acids. And if you eat meat once in a while, again, you're getting the best of both worlds.
So as we wrap this up, we talked about macronutrients, micronutrients. We talked about Nutrition 101. We talked about the bulls, which is bowel, urine, lymphatic, lungs, and skin. And we talked about you have gaps in your diet. We all have gaps in our diet. You have stress. You're not going to always be able to digest food. When you're in this state of fight or flight, we didn't even get into that today, but we've talked about it before. It's hard to digest. So you have these holes, you have these gaps, and I do believe you have two options. You can fill those holes or think that you're filling those holes with synthetic supplements or some of these quick fixes. Or you can look back and say, how do I fill these holes with foods, specifically some of these superfoods? And when you fill them with superfoods, in my opinion, you start to create this art, this dance, that's easy to repeat, but also you're going to get, to me, the most exponential outcome down the road.
That's why wheatgrass is so powerful, because it's a live bunch of minerals, 90 plus minerals.
Yeah, I mean, if that woman gave you any more time and if she said, yeah, I really want to solve this, well, are you going to do 90 days of wheatgrass and just see if it helps?
Yeah, 90 days.
90 days.
Do cod liver oil, spirulina chlorella, and wheatgrass.
It's going to patch a lot of holes.
In 90 days, you'd be shocked. And make sure you're drinking enough water.
So I think the biggest takeaway is you cut out a macronutrient or a micronutrient, you're going to have macro problems down the road. And let me repeat that. You cut out carbohydrates, you will have some problem down the road. Most people, like I said, are not missing protein. But if you did cut out protein or didn't have enough protein, you will have problems. If you don't have the right kind of fat, you will have problems. We're starting to see this with vitamins. You don't have the right vitamins because you're not eating the right foods, you'll have problems. You don't have the right minerals, maybe you're not having the variety, you're going to have problems. But the biggest takeaway that I want you to understand is it's simple. You don't get nutrients from nutrients, you get nutrients from food. And when you do it that way, the body knows what to do with those nutrients. If you do it the other way and you're just focused on the nutrients, then we're now going to have to piecemeal it, and the body doesn't know how to do what it knows what to do with.
That's your dance.
That's the dance. And so this is a little bit of the science of macro, micro, but it's a dance. And so you cut out a macronutrient, you're going to have macro problems. We'll see you again next time.